Is the pressure on for me to like really nail an interview with my boss?
No.
A little bit. A little bit. No
That's funny.
judgment being passed whatsoever. How are you doing?
I once had to interview Barack Obama twice. That was nerve wracking.
How do you prepare for something like that?
Well, you prepare for it, and then I just kind of had 12 questions. I whittled it down to six, and then if it went longer, I'd ad lib. But I just didn't. I just want to be prepared, be smart, and just like it's not. I don't prepare for most guests, like podcasting. I do, but like if I'm doing a show, I don't usually know who's on until like I step to the mic right before the show, and there's a list.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's occasionally like Bob Costas was one of my idols. If Bob
Sure.
is coming on, I'm probably going to give it a good hour of thought. But
Yeah.
I'm a pressure free guest, so don't worry about that.
Well, I don't know. I feel like I go back and forth. There's times that I feel like I put in a ton of work on certain interviews of like what I want to ask someone and blah, blah, blah. But then there's other times when I just throw caution to the wind. And those end up being my favorite interviews, usually, to just like see what's going to happen, turn on the mic and figure it out. That's not what I'm doing here with you today because I felt like I should prepare a little bit.
That's funny.
How do you juggle everything? I mean, how do you juggle from living your life, doing the herd, launching the volume? How are you doing all of this?
I think I surround myself with really good people. I'm not a meddler. Whether it's at FS1, iHeartRadio, or the Volume, I hire good people. I do my homework before the hire, and then I just get out of the way. And if I have to occasionally bark or say, "Hey, this doesn't feel authentic to my brand," or I think we're forcing this. I mean, that's very infrequent. But I've been doing it so long. I know what I like. I've surrounded myself with people who know what I like. And so, I also think you reach a point and in your career where I'm not losing sleep if I have a bad segment. Like just
Right.
it's I mean, I say this and it sounds glib, but the greatest basketball player ever, Michael Jordan, literally missed half his shots. Derek Jeter, 7 out of 10 times did not get on base. Like you can't let it get to your head. Prep, let it rip, go have a cocktail. Don't overthink it.
How long did it take you to get to that point?
About 10 years, I think 32, 33 years old. I just felt like you're stressing out too much. Just let it rip, be natural. I also think about 32, 33. I kind of found my voice. Up to that point, I was doing, 10% of this person, 10% of that person. I had influences, a little Letterman, a little Costas, just people that were broadcasting idols, a little Johnny Carson. And then all of a sudden
Love
one
me
day
some
you just
Johnny
you've
Carson.
talked so much, you stop thinking about them and you just become the best version of you. But that's why I take criticism pretty well. I'm not trying to bat 1,000 here. I'm not going to be precious on stuff. I have bad
Just keep
segments. I
Yeah,
misread shit. It's just like you read the wrong stat and you
sure.
have done that this week. I mean, it just happens. You can't worry about it. And,
Yeah.
also there are people in my life who have resumes that deserve my attention. If a successful broadcaster or a successful executive comes to me and questions something, that's different than a random guy on Twitter.
Of
Who are
course.
you?
Yeah.
Everybody's great on Twitter. I'm not really interested.
Oh my God. I was literally just saying that right before you hopped on here, but in like sort of a different context that somebody had tweeted at me trying to like burn me in some capacity. And I responded with the accurate reason of, what happened. And they're like, just kidding. Huge fan, big supporter. It's like, oh my God, stay off the internet. That stuff
Yeah.
drives me bonkers. People just trying to get attention or screaming into the abyss on this
Well,
blue
I
little
mean,
bird
you
machine.
you were in you've done some stand up, right?
I mean, I would use that term very loosely. I have. It wasn't the thing that I was like, the only reason I ever did stand up was because, kind of like you just mentioned, you have your idols, these people that you really look up to. For me, that was Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Sarah Silverman. Those were, and Chelsea Handler was a huge one for me. And those women all had done stand-up to some degree, maybe not so much Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, but that was something I just felt like, I'm like, well, if they're doing that, I gotta just go give it a shot. And it was terrifying. But no, it was not the thing that I wanted to do.
But think about that. Think how long it takes a comedian to go on stage, work out an act at the Comedy Store or at home before they nail it.
Yes.
We don't get that.
Yeah.
We're not actors where it's edited. We're not writers where you have a copy editor. Local news is a teleprompter. I am ad-libbing for 3 hours a day. No shit. I have an occasional bad interview or guest. I mean, like, he can't. This is live. And now podcasting's different. I do a podcast. I can edit out a bad moment. That's why I sound much more, it's much more ideal, right? As a platform, because I can edit out rough spots. But when I'm doing that 3 hour show, I'm not sure, mistakes. It's part of it, man. The greatest people, I mean, Tom Hanks has had bombs. Marlon Brando had 8 awful movies, and those were edited. Yeah. And he chose them, and he worked a year on them. Like, Will Ferrell's brilliant. He's had awful movies and bad stand-ups and terrible Saturday Night Live skits. We're artists. We're performing. You're not. The minute you get out of the perfect thing, the funnier you get.
Yes. Yes, of course. Okay, I want to just harken back to something that you had mentioned, your love of Johnny Carson. Why was he one of the guys? I mean, of course, he's like, he's the greatest, duh. But why did you gravitate toward him?
My dad thought he was cool. He didn't have all the channels, so he was one of the, you didn't have all the games on. I just thought he was cool. I thought he was debonair, the way he dressed. He could relate to regular people, movie stars. He was quick-witted. He could laugh. Like, to me, he was just, I was never really into local news people or the newsman. Johnny was cool, and I wasn't, and I'm not. So there was a coolness to Johnny that I always.
I mean, you're pretty cool.
I mean, like, not
Johnny Carson's
really.
a different.
But it's funny because nobody thinks Stephen Colbert's cool or Jimmy Fallon's cool or Letterman's cool or Leno's cool.
No one's been cool like Johnny Carson. Nobody.
He was cool. He was good looking, and women, movie stars flirted with him.
Yeah.
And I just think as a kid, it was just, my dad was kind of a tall, I thought, pretty good looking guy. And you kind of look up to your dad, and maybe there was some connection I didn't have, but it was like, it was just, when I looked at Johnny Carson, I thought, I like sports, but that was the first person I watched on TV and thought, I'd love to do that. But I'm not funny enough. I don't know enough about pop culture and Hollywood, and I really gravitated to sports. So even when I liked sportscasters, it was usually Costas was funny. You know what I mean?
He really knew how to wear a turtleneck. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Yes. So it's just one of those things where, and I think I've bridged that, where I have a sense of humor. I don't take myself too seriously. That's why podcasting works for me. Like, it's an easy, there's no rigidity with it. It's kind of let it rip. And I think that works for my personality. I'm not a teleprompter reader. I'm not a host, the stoic host. There are hosts I watch, and they're so good at what they do, and they're so refined, and they're so classically hosty. And I'm not.
Was there ever times in your career that those like more traditional hosty gigs were offered to you? I mean, the brand that you have built, I'm sure some of those opportunities must have come your way with that like big shiny floor and, that's kind of situation.
Well, to be honest, Renee, it didn't exist. So I grew up in a world of columnists, local sportscasters, and play-by-play guys. There wasn't a me. When I went to ESPN, I've told this story before, the first 5 years, they didn't know what to do with me. They're like, he doesn't do play-by-play. He's not really a host. He's got strong opinions. In fact, John Walsh, kind of the more cerebral of the executives at ESPN, kind of the prince of journalism. It all went through John. And John liked me, and I wasn't traditional. So John said, you're the company theorist. You make us all think. And that was the first person at ESPN after 5 years that said, they're trying to pigeonhole you here, and what you are is one of one. You're the company theorist. I drive to work, I listen to you, and then you create topics for other shows that people didn't think about. And that was the first person at the company. And I thought, yeah, That's kind of what I feel like I am. Like I'm not Mike and Mike. I'm not the other people. And that's okay. I can't host like Scott Van Pelt. I can't do play-by-play like a Joe Buck. That's not what I am. And so I've never worried about comparing myself to others because this is what I do. It's my act. It's authentic. And I hope you like it.
It's really interesting how that happens where, I feel like somebody in your role, in the role that I've done throughout my career, I've worn so many different hats because I often
Yes.
feel a lot of the same thing of people don't really know what to do with me. They're not really sure where to place me. And when I started doing commentary for Raw, they were just like, essentially at the time I was the best person for the job to step in there and do that. But like, I've never done play by play. I had not a clue what I was doing. So I'm thrown into the deep end trying to figure it out on national television, in this insane situation. But that was not my strong suit. And it's funny how people often think when you just see someone working in sports of like, oh, well, you can do that and you can do that and you can do that. But they are really different roles. And it's really hard to succeed at all of them.
When I created the volume, my takeaway was I wanted to hire people because I couldn't get into bidding wars with Fox and ESPN. So I wanted to hire people that they wouldn't know what to do with. Mm-hmm. Jenkins and Jones, Renee, what would you do? Where would you put her? So I wanted to talk about the same sports, but I just wanted different angles on it. So I looked for people who did things differently. Mm-hmm. And so I've had a lot of people, really talented people. You'd be surprised by the list of really, really top end people that have asked, hey, can I be part of the volume? And it just doesn't fit what I'm trying to do. I'm not looking for traditional broadcasters. I want personalities. That's what I want. And because maybe it's not that I have a sympathy, but I connect with those people. Like networks they don't know what to do with them. And it's like, oh, I do. I know exactly what to do with them. Create some digital stuff, let them be themselves, interview whoever they want. Like Jenkins and Jones, it's almost like on some days it's comedy and basketball. It's cultural. What you're doing, you're stepping out and interviewing people beyond what you've done before. When I look at you, I just think, oh, she's entertaining. That's the word. Oh, she's interesting. She's entertaining. I think sometimes corporate executives, and it's not a criticism, it's a reality of the platforms they have and the roles they need to fill. Mm-hmm. They're looking for certain things. I was just looking for entertaining people. I didn't really care what they were, man, woman, young, old. I didn't care. Yeah. And so that's what I've tried to cobble together, and I think we're doing a good job.
Yeah, I think we're doing a great job. I mean, as the volume grows and expands and all the amazing shows that are existing under this umbrella, why did you want to start doing the volume? How did that seed sort of get planted in your brain that that's what you wanted to do next in your career?
Well, the pandemic hit and it was killing sports talk radio ratings and advertising. And Julie Talbot, who is the CEO of Premier Radio, she had called me about 2.5 months into the pandemic. And she said, you're killing. Your show is sold out. Your ratings are through the roof. And she just congratulated me. And I remember hanging up the phone thinking, well, if it's sold out now, what happens when people get back on the road? Because remember, cars weren't on the road in America. Nobody went to work.
Right.
So I thought, if I don't create another platform, those advertisers will go to my rivals. So I said, I got to create, and I didn't want to do any more hours on radio. Like I didn't want to do a 4-hour show. So I thought, I'm just going to create a podcast network. So when the economy is good again, because for the first 2 months it wasn't, when the economy is good again and we're charging more for spots and the show is sold out, I'll retain those spots. I'll retain those advertisers. And it just grew really, really fast. We had an unbelievable fourth quarter.
Oh my gosh.
I think we've grown so much faster than we thought. And it's a credit to really smart young executives and the people. It's just, it's really interesting that Draymond Green for us, I think we surprised people when we landed him. He's classically the volume. He's absolutely what we are. He's a second rounder. He's overlooked. He's a grinder. He doesn't fit. What is he? Is he the classic forward? Is he a point forward?
We're like the land of misfit toys.
Yeah. But I think that's what I always wanted. I wanted people that didn't fit traditional roles. I just wanted smart, interesting people. I remember Alex Monaco did stand up, and
Yeah,
somebody
that guy's
showed
a
me
trip, man.
a maniac. And somebody said, so I wanted to create a company that was 70% content, 30% gambling content.
Hmm.
And I saw Monaco and I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, he's a comedian who does picks. That's not available on the market.
Yeah.
That there's nothing else like there,
Hmm.
out there like that. And then, he was a classic. And then Liv Moods. Remember, somebody showed me the tape and she was, obviously striking. And I'm like, confident. She's doing stuff from her home.
Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah. And I was like, that's my words. Like, yeah, she's cool.
Hmm.
I kind of like, there's not, most pickers aren't cool.
No, they're
Right. Most
not.
sport. So we have a stand-up comedian and Liv Moods.
Yeah.
Totally unique in the marketplace of making picks. So
Yeah.
again, same sports, different angles. So that to me has always been the fun in this, is just finding these unique voices.
Why do you think that these unique voices, and I do think that there is so much depth to talent that exists under the volume, and these people, other people that exist outside of the volume, why is it that they have a hard time finding where to fit in? I mean, I know there's a traditional side of things, but when you look at being a personality on television, especially in like the sports world, I kind of look back into like what Keith Olbermann did and the changes that he made of being like a cool sports broadcaster. Why is it so hard to make that happen?
Well, it's hard to, when Steve Jobs created the iPhone,
Mm-hmm.
he said what he really did was say, I'm going to create something you don't know you need it yet. And it's going to be indispensable once I create it. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
We didn't think we needed it. Now we can't live without it.
Right.
Most executives are not entrepreneurial. They know roles they have to fill, but they're not good at predicting. Like, nobody could quite figure out, I think, initially Pat McAfee. And I remember meeting McAfee 2 years ago, could have been 3 years ago. And I said, don't co-host anything. I said, Pat, go do your own thing. I'm not sure what you are. You just go do your own stuff. Don't worry about networks. You just go do your own stuff. So he's your, NFL punter, wrestler, swears, funny. He doesn't fit any traditional role. It's like networks don't know what to do with that. They don't know what to do with that. So I think because most aren't entrepreneurs, I'm not saying I'm some, great business person, but I think I have a little bit of that in me, is that I'm always looking for stuff that you don't know you need yet, or you don't know you'll be addicted to yet. That to me is the fun in this, not going, he's just like him. Let's hire him. She's just like her. I've been doing this 25 years. I'm totally over that. I'm trying to find somebody and you go, what? I'm not sure. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, you're like, oh my God, I can't miss her podcast.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Every morning I get up and listen. That to me is the fun in this.
Yeah. It's wide open. I mean, the opportunities are endless within that. Let's go into some of your health stuff. It was last summer that what all went down?
So I have the same waist I did in college. I work out every day, or try to. I eat right. I'm kind of neurotic on food.
I've seen you with the food. You cut out those carbs. You're really keeping it clean.
Yeah.
Respect.
And so I got into a ski accident. I would say 15 months ago, where I crashed and broke a rib, and it hurt so much that I couldn't even go for like walks. Forget runs, like walks hurt. Mm-hmm. So for about 8 weeks, I was just sedentary. And I never drank water because I was never thirsty, because I never moved. I was drinking a lot of coffee because I was so tired and sleepy and laying in bed. And water thins the blood. Coffee does not. I wasn't moving, and I was flying a lot.
Oh, God.
And all of a sudden, I got a little clot in my calf. It moved up, and I got off a flight, went to dinner with my wife, and after about 2 bites of steak, I looked at her and I said, I feel like somebody just stabbed me. I've got to get to a hospital. I have no idea what's happening. I stood up, and it was the most severe pain I've ever had in my life. And so it was the day before the Super Bowl. I called a friend, Mike Zislis, who I'm in business with, and he literally 4 minutes later pulled down the street. I was around his neighborhood at a restaurant, got in the car, drove through 15 red lights. He was on the board. He's on the board of Torrance Medical Center.
Mhm.
I don't know how we got there in 15 minutes. It was a Saturday night. Because of COVID, nobody was allowed in. My wife wasn't allowed in. So I'm sitting there on a bed and they think it's COVID. They take all these tests and they're like, you have a blood clot.
Holy shit.
And I was like,
That's so terrifying.
yeah. And so I didn't even know what to say. And then they put me upstairs in this, area that was a little more serious. And then I would say 36 hours later, I watched the Super Bowl. Brady beat the Chiefs. 36 hours later, I could still feel it, but I was on blood thinners. And, they let me go. It didn't, I refused. So I got off the painkillers. I just refused to take them. And so the first 2 days out were painful. Like everything hurt. But
Why didn't you want to take the painkillers?
Because I've heard of people getting addicted to painkillers, and I don't even like taking aspirin.
Fair.
And then I was on blood thinners for about 2 months, maybe a little longer. And they kept, battery of blood tests. They couldn't find anything. So it just happens. It was a series of events. But let me tell you something. When you have a blood clot and it's COVID and you're in the emergency room and it was so funny because I went through this, was it CAT scan or whatever it is, you go through, you get x-rayed. And the guy dropped me. So I was on this bed.
Shut up.
I dropped it. Renee, I can't even, literally, have you ever cried without crying? Just
yes.
Water comes from your eyes. I was in such I was in such severe pain. And it was almost like a shock. I just couldn't, I just screamed. Yeah! Guy's like, oh, bro, sorry. He's like 22-year-old kid.
Oh my God.
And so I went back in that pain and I remember thinking, I got to call my kids. I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm sitting there. Nobody can go in. It's COVID. Nobody can come in. And maybe I was being overly dramatic, but the pain for about 20 minutes was so severe. And, blood clots are, they're irritation. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, don't. You can't call them. You'll get emotional. Don't. And then, they give you stuff. You get the morphine drip. You're like,
on another planet.
Yeah. But it was, I would say for 90 minutes, it was rough. It's no fun to be in the emergency room with a blood clot.
No.
It's not fun.
That's something that that has always been my fear. I mean, traveling as much as I did every week with WWE, I would think about that all the time. Like, what if it happened? It's this silent killer. Oh my God. That is so horrifying.
How is it? How have people not died on flights over the Atlantic? Old people.
Don't know.
I mean, all you do is sit down for 12 straight hours.
I know.
No movement.
Yeah. We took a flight to Australia. We had a show in Australia in Adelaide, I think. Had the flight there, and somebody did have a heart attack. I believe it wasn't a blood clot, but they had a heart attack on the flight in first class. And old school wrestler Michael Hayes happened to be the person. He looks like a little bit insane, and I mean this with the best intentions. He just has crazy long hair. His outfit, he's wearing a full teal or lilac purple suit, and he is the one to jump to this man's aid with CPR. And yeah, we had to stop down somewhere else in Australia before we took off. But that's the fear, taking those long flights of what's going to happen. It gives me anxiety to even think about.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I won't go to Australia, I don't think I'm built to do 14 hours on the plane this point going forward. Now, again, I'm going to go for a run today. I drink water nonstop. I don't take elevators since then.
Hate elevators.
Yeah.
Have you ever been stuck in an elevator?
No, as a kid, I was a little claustrophobic. I remember being part of a football game we won and people piled on me. Didn't like that at all.
No.
Not at all. at
That's
all.
horrifying. I'm like a late in life claustrophobic. I never used to suffer from it. Now I'm like, oh my God, like getting in an elevator is my nightmare.
Well, I tell my wife I have professional claustrophobia. I do
Oh,
not like feeling trapped as a broadcaster. You have to do this. You have to say this. Here's the teleprompter. I just don't like it. I don't like being, when I created this podcast network, I don't think, my employers initially loved it. And I'm like, listen, I'm going to do it. Or we just can't be in business long term together. So like,
right.
I don't want to be trapped. It's new. It's fun. This is what I want. If I feel trapped, I'm out.
Yeah,
It's
let baby
professional
go.
claustrophobia. I'm out.
Yeah. No, I feel that there's nothing worse than, especially at this point in your career, like for somebody to dare try to tell you what you can or cannot do. You've built your own empire at this point. That boat has sailed.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, it has. The boat has sailed. You're doing
Okay.
it. You've confirmed from me, not your
Okay.
agent, but I'm here to say that. You mentioned your wife. What's your relationship like with your wife? How did you guys meet? Let's get into a little Colin romance. Are you a
So,
romantic guy? Yeah. Yes,
well, I
you
don't
are.
know.
A little
I
bit.
don't know. So, I was divorced amicably, although initially it wasn't amicable probably as much as I'd like it to be. But it's the first 6 months to a year tough, right? You don't see your kids as much. It's pretty emotional. So I was divorced and living in a condo in Hartford.
Oof.
And I was looking for something. It was renting it. I was looking for something full time, and I went to this. Liz was the name of my real estate agent, and she said, "I've got this woman, and she's been like separated for like 8 or 9 months or whatever it is, and her name is Anne, and she goes, I don't set people up. I'm not saying it's from me, but she's a designer, and you said you were looking for a designer if you bought your place. So here's her number." So Liz is not the kind of, she goes, I'm not a matchmaker. I will deny it. So as she was talking, I dialed Anne's number and put it on speaker. And Liz is like, looks at me and I said, hey, Anne, I heard you're hot. Let's go out. Liz Tier totally set me up. And Liz starts screaming, you blankety blank. And Anne's laughing and Liz is screaming. And I said, hey, I need a designer, but I'd love to go out with you. So we met and I knew.
Wait, you hired her as your designer and booked a date all in one phone call?
Well, I said, Liz said I need a designer, but she said we also are compatible. So we went out and I knew instantly. I just knew. She was really culturally with it and funny and attractive and socially, you could have a cocktail with her. She was just easy breezy talker. And I just knew it. And, we'd both felt kind of, if not vulnerable, we'd both been kind of beaten up a little bit. We were just we're looking for companionship and fun and laughs. Cause when you go through that, man, it's dark.
Sure.
I think we both kind of looked at each other and thought, this will be fun. She was a really fun personality. And then she broke up with me 6 times in 6 months. Oh, God.
Damn.
Oh,
How
yeah,
did you
she
get
broke
her to
up.
keep taking you back? Were you like out
I
with like
don't
the
know.
stereo outside her house?
Well, I don't want to bore your audience, but I went to.
We love the emotional stories. You kidding me? This is what we're all here for. We talked about the broadcasting stuff. I want this.
That's so boring. Cut that shit out. So this is the good stuff. So I went to, I had an epiphany. So we broke up a lot and stuff. And even I would say, the first year of our marriage, she's a feisty Irish girl with a strong point of view, very creative. She's an artist.
She's a redhead, isn't she?
Yeah, redhead, beautiful redhead.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. And I went to a therapist, and I think I've told this story on some platforms. So I'd been to him about 10, 12 times. I had moved from Los Angeles, and it was just a lot. I was moving kids and family and schools, a new job, just tons of stress. And I said, I feel some anxiety. I got to talk myself out of this stuff. So it was the 10th or 12th meeting with this therapist. And anyway, in the meeting, he mentioned something, and he goes, that's why you can't see the frog. And I went, what? And he goes, yeah, that's why you can't see the frog.
What frog?
And I said, what are you talking about? I thought it was code for something, right?
Yeah.
And he said, move your eyes up 2 inches. And I moved my eyes up, and there was a giant frog hanging from one of his lights. And he said, it's been there 5 years. You've never seen it. He goes, that's your brain type. He goes, your wife would walk in here. The next time she would come in, if I removed it, if I changed colors, she would know everything in this office.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a real eye opener for me. We have never argued much since. That was
Wow.
a long time ago. And it was really an eye opener that we have different brains. I have to accept, it's really made me think differently about people in general.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you go to these social media platforms and everybody's trying to convince everybody else to think like them. And we all have different brain types.
Mm-hmm.
I married an artist. So the laughs are big. The fights are feisty. That's who she is. She can see things before I can see things. But I also think I add more of a sort of unemotional, sort of kind of common sense, bring it down, take the heat out of the room a little bit sometimes, because my mom was British, very reticent, very British. My dad was the stoic doctor. So that's my brain type. And hers is the opposite. But it was a real moment where I was like, why am I trying to make her think like me? What's the point of this? This is really not good for us.
Well, I feel
And
like a
from
lot
that
of
point,
people in relationships, they do that. They feel like we're together and now we're going to become the same person. We've got to be the same all the time. And like, what a curse that is.
well, yeah, I mean, you're turned on by a guy. The woman is like, he's kind of flirting this and that. And then you marry him. It's like, well, why aren't you in bed by 9? It's like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. That's
you
not
met
who
him at
married.
10.
Yeah.
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 That's right.
What made you start getting into therapy? I love a good therapy session. I don't even do therapy, but I love that other people do therapy. I should do therapy. This is my therapy.
Well, I think when I was in my 20s, so I put my kids now occasionally in therapy if they have an issue, because I'm not a professional. Go talk to a therapist. What do they think? Here's a voice that's not judging you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was in my 20s in Las Vegas, and multiple divorces with my parents, and I think I just wanted a smart, older set of ears, and I just talked, and I almost performed. My friends were all my age, 24, and I just wanted somebody smart to listen and figure out some of my idiosyncratic issues. And some of it was probably low-level Asperger's, which I have, or autism. It's probably low level.
Do you have that for real?
I think I'm on the low end of the spectrum. Yeah.
I
mean,
say
I
to my
know.
husband all the time that I think he is.
Yeah, I have a little bit of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I have a little bit of that. So I just wanted to figure it out. I knew I acted differently and thought differently than other people. I talked to myself a lot. Just how I process stuff. I just don't think it's normal,
Did you get tested for that, for like to see if you're on the spectrum of autism or Asperger's?
No, but I've talked to people with it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I understand totally. What?
Interesting.
Yeah. So I just self-diagnosis. I just felt I needed a sounding board, and then I always do the same thing. I go 6, 7, 8 times. Fine. 5 or 6 years later, I'm like, because I don't want to be neurotic. And then about 5 or 6 years later, I'm in a spot here. Let me. And so I'll go, and I haven't done it since that time. So I haven't done it in years, but I'm always open to, a fresh set of ears and perspectives.
That's really interesting at like 24 for you to be that young. Because I mean, now that's all everyone talks about is mental health, and we all.
That was 30 years ago.
Yeah, like that's really impressive. That you kind of had the wherewithal to go in and do that at that time, because it certainly was not as popular as it is now. Was it hard for you to come to that conclusion that you wanted to go into therapy, or did it make you feel like that stigma of that? Like,
no,
I
was really excited about it. And you know what I was finding? That the women I was dating, at this time I was single, the women I was dating, they were all saying the same thing. I don't know how. I mean, they all liked me, but they would be like, "Oh, no other woman could deal with this." They all said that. And after about the 4th woman I dated, they're all like, I just, oh boy, you're different. They'd all dated guys.
Like, what were some of these things? What were the hang-ups?
I was just so willful and dogmatic about what I believed, and you couldn't stop me. And I was not uncaring, but just so driven. I would stay home on a Friday night and tape broadcasters on a cassette, study them and write. And these women were just like, this is not normal. I've dated other men. This is now, of course, I haven't talked to a lot of those women in a long time. But now the women over the last 20 years have been like, I always knew you were going to do great, and I'm like, you dumped me. What? You're right. You broke my heart. What are you talking about?
Wasn't good enough then when I was grinding away and it seemed insane, but now that it's my job, it's cool all of a sudden. Thanks.
Yeah, right.
That's so funny. You as a dad, what do you like as a dad with your kids?
Not a helicopter parent. I would rather they make mistakes while, they were either living with me, or I feel like I'm more of a seminal voice in their life. They get married. Nobody, you're going to avoid me, right? So you're going to have another influence in your life. But I think, pre 21, I can have more of an influence. I'm kind of, again, they're human beings. They're not human doings. So they're going to do what they want to do, and I let them. They both have a strong point of view. They're very different, very different. Sometimes I think my daughter would be happy being kind of a successful hippie, just kind of traveling. And, she's just can be very chill. My son is very techie and very driven. And I try to be there for them, support them, not spoil them. But parenting's hard. It's seeing your kids get their heart broken, or seeing your kids disappointed. It's hard. It's the hardest thing of my life.
Was it hard to not spoil your kids? I mean, having, being financially well off and living in California, having all these beautiful things right there. Was it hard to not spoil them?
We've always had a rule: education and experiences will spare no cost. I'm going to give you experiences and any education. We're not going to talk about what it costs. It is what it is. After that, I think I live a very normal life. I don't own a watch. I don't have a second car. I'm not into stuff. I'm not a stuff guy.
What kind of car do you drive?
It's a lease from one of my advertisers.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I'm not a car person. I could give a shit about spending money on a car. What a waste of money. I actually don't even have a car right now, so.
Yeah, I'm not. So I don't have like those guy things, golf club memberships, multiple cars, boats. It's not my thing. Watches, it's stuff guy.
Yeah.
That's not me. So we don't live an exorbitant life. Now, do I fly private occasionally? Yeah. Have I taken them on that private jet occasionally? Yeah. Because I tell their mom this. I'm like, listen, I'm not going to pretend I haven't done well. Okay. So I'm not going to pretend, but I think our kids, like, our Christmases aren't crazy. They get a couple presents. We hang out in Utah. We ski. I don't, when I look at our kids, the six of us together, and for me too, I don't think they're spoiled. Maybe a little. I think they have some comforts. Not comforts. I would say, because none of them are living in, they're living in just regular old apartments all over the country. I would say they've had experiences that are perhaps a little higher end than some kids, but not exorbitant. I mean, we're not hella skiing in Aspen. We're not doing that stuff.
We should try that at some point.
I would. I'm going to try it.
It sounds really great. Okay, Colin, before I let you go, I would be remiss to not talk to you.
What?
I mean, you're a very unapologetic broadcaster. You have been through your entire career. But you've said some comments in the past about wrestling fans.
Oh, yes.
Has your opinion of wrestling fans changed over the years?
Well, yeah. So, my former agent now is the president of WWE.
Yep.
And so years ago when I was at ESPN, and listen, I'm not going to lie here. If you watch my show, there are times it's tongue in cheek. I call myself America's honesty broker. I joke about journalism. We all know, I'm not Walter Cronkite here. Okay.
Mm.
So there's some tongue in cheek stuff. So at one point I was talking about wrestlers and I had said something and they just went crazy reacting to me. And I'm like, oh, this is funny. So I started calling them booger-eaters. They just went crazy and it bothered them so much. It became funny. Like it was just, and one of the guys on the staff was a huge wrestling fan and he loved it. He thought it was he goes, oh, I went on these boards last night. Man, it was crazy.
Oh God.
But it is interesting. I've been at Fox now for about 8 years. My last couple years at ESPN, I said on the air, I said, the world's changing and everybody's going to streaming. And I said this at ESPN. I said, I think wrestling is going to end up on these sports networks.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting numbers. Increasingly, all sports is becoming entertainment. And I remember saying that and people were like, what about booger-eaters? And I was like, the world changes. Like wrestling now is not only mainstream, you can put it on ESPN.
Yeah.
You can put it on Fox. And it's like, these people, these wrestlers are doing amazing charitable things. They become Hollywood iconic figures. Some run for office. It's like, if we're going to treat like all these actors certain ways, it's like these wrestlers are like, if you think about it, actors getting the shit kicked out of them.
Yeah.
Like it's like a combo hybrid actor athlete.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of redeeming people in the sport. I think their stories are fascinating. And so like, it's just like anything else. Like you just pivot. I remember the first time I saw UFC 20 years ago and I'm like, that's way too violent. Then Dana White came in the Fertitta family and they took out the eye gouging and mainstream advertisers came in. They were very reluctant to do that when it first started. They cleaned it up. And now I prefer it mostly over boxing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hands
So
down.
Colby Covington, Masvidal, I'll sit and watch that whole thing. Like that's really a good card for me.
Yeah.
I don't watch that many boxing cards, right? So I think I'm not somebody that I'm much more interested in tomorrow than I am enamored with yesterday. Like I pivot off stuff all the time. I have new opinions. I have new information. But I will say this, the former staff member I had who liked wrestling, he was really
A booger-eater. Oh,
keep pushing. They're going.
well,
he
that's how
loved
it goes. You have that heel turn.
I was a heel.
You gotta lean into that heel turn. Let them have it. Let them hate you. You want them to boo you. You don't want them to be indifferent.
Well, Hulk Hogan became a heel. Mm-hmm. Why can't I become a heel? I am a heel.
You are a heel. You're a heel through and through. Yeah, that was one of those things. I was like, if I don't talk to him about this, my fans are going to go bonkers. So, of course, we had to bring it up. But you were able to go to SummerSlam. You got to go down to check it out. We got to do some of our podcasts in Las Vegas.
Great.
You had Triple H on your show. How was that whole experience?
Oh, it was great. I loved interviewing Triple H. You know what I was really proud of? I think I almost made him cry.
Oh, wow. What happened?
Let me say this. I'll try to say it without vanity. I made Jerry Tarkanian cry. I think when I interview, I'm kind of looking, the bigger, the stronger the athlete. I'm always looking for the soft spot.
Let's chip away a little bit. Yeah.
I want to find where he's vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And I talked about Triple H, and I don't recall exactly what it was, but he was so human. Mm-hmm. That's why he's super smart if you talk to him. Like he really knows, really bright.
The cerebral assassin.
Yeah. And so those kind of people are always great. Mm-hmm. And we talked about something and he paused and I was like, God, this is great. He's a real dude. And there's nothing better. Some of these guys like Stone Cold and Triple H. These guys, The Rock, these are Cena. They're massive people. But the stuff that bothers them is the stuff that bothers the insecure little 12-year-old kid, right? Like, I think I once I knew this woman, she was a child psychologist. And she said, like, the stuff that injures you at 8, it never goes away.
Yep. Those bruises stick around
forever.
Yeah.
And you find these big, strong athletes, man, and you have Tom Brady still crying about where he was drafted. Money doesn't solve it. Success doesn't solve it. Hurt is hurt. And that Triple H interview in Vegas, I came off that and I was like, that's a top 10 for me. I loved it.
Wow. You know, it's
Such a
really
moment.
funny for you saying that because honestly, I feel like I've been very reflective in my own podcast lately, having a lot of those similar moments. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I wanted to start doing the sessions was I have this relationship where relationships with so many different wrestlers and these guys that are revered as these like, you know, these monumental larger than life human beings, but knowing what their story is, knowing what some of their struggles are, knowing some of the things that they've been through or not knowing them and me being able to uncover that and have those conversations. I had my episode from today actually with Cash Wheeler. I interviewed him and I had no idea where it was going to go. I had very few notes written down. And he got to get up and walk away 3 times during the interview and like, I'm becoming emotional. But that's the stuff that sticks with you. And it stuck with me all week long. And it just, that's what I love. I just love people. I find people fascinating. I think their stories are so fascinating. And to me, wrestling really is one of those things, especially with it being this niche product. And the wrestlers that grew up doing it and, you know, kind of outcast by, not by society, but it wasn't the cool thing to do necessarily. And now here they are with these amazing careers. And I think it's so cool.
It doesn't take any courage to hurt somebody. What it takes courage to do is acknowledge you've been hurt. Mm-hmm. And so social media is trying to hurt people. But when you can really find somebody that's really secure in themselves and can just go, yeah, I bawled like a baby. It's like, that's hard to do publicly when you're the big, strong person, right?
Yeah.
The politician, the wrestler, the pro athlete. That's courage. You stand up and just say, I can't emotionally. I'm weak. That's a really cool thing. And probably in my life, I've had 6 or 7 moments where I'm with this larger than life figure and they just go really vulnerable. And you just sit there and you're like, wow, I totally respect that person. Total respect.
Especially to do it publicly, because honestly, it's so hard to even come to that conclusion internally, let alone letting other people in on that is like, what a vulnerability for them to let us in on. And when those moments happen, I mean, yeah, just to humanize somebody for a second and stop. Because, yeah, I mean, all we do, we're constantly analyzing everybody. Social media is constantly analyzing everybody and throwing these stones. But end of the day, these men and women, the work that they put in and staying focused on their goal and all that, I love it so much. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's it's jet fuel. Criticism is jet fuel.
Yeah,
so
certainly.
When you get hurt, that's the stuff that you go back and Michael Jordan, even in his prime, was taping stuff on mirrors in his house, doubters and columnists. He acknowledges he sometimes made them up. Like he would create stuff in his head that they don't believe in me. And it's like, yeah, when Michael Jordan's doing that, like he knows where the motivation comes from, not from being praised, from being doubted and challenged and critiqued. And so it's a that's what sports offers that news doesn't. We just deal with these driven, willful, just almost exotically talented people. And they're all, at some point, they've all had critics. You go back and look at Michael Jordan's documentary. He was the best player, probably the best looking player, the best dressed player, the most glamorous player. It was so hard. He didn't get along with his owner, his GM. He had to have 2 coaches fired. Michael Jordan's career was so effing hard. And he was great, glamorous, good-looking, stylish, rich. Like you go back and you look at the legends. You go back and look at Brady and these are the great ones. And Russell Wilson, his college coach said, "You're going to have to transfer. I'm going to replace you with Mike Glennon." What?
Man.
Like, so when these are the greats. I tell my kids this. These are the greatest rock stars in the world. And they went, as Andy Dufresne said, through 10 miles of shit to get there. So what is it like for people that aren't that gifted? So you just forget how hard it is for the icons.
Yeah, that have the means to make things happen, and it's
Tom
still
Hanks,
rough.
bosom buddies. Like, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you forget Tom's on a TV show. It's different. If go look at Tom Hanks, I don't think his first hit was until movie 10. So that's his first hit. How many auditions did he get turned down for? How many years?
yeah,
Tom Hanks.
yeah.
So I always tell my kids this. The people that I cover, the legends, their stories. I just read a book on Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K.
Hmm.
He had a losing record at Army. He almost got fired at Duke twice. That program started to nosedive about 3 different times. He's the winningest coach ever. The
Yeah,
whole damn thing was trials and tribulations.
yeah.
So it's like, if that's what it's like for the greatest, don't lose confidence in yourself. Don't. It's okay. It's hard for everybody. But man, when you come out of it, God, does it feel good.
Oh my God. Honestly, when you get that success, you have that great day, you have a great show, you have a great interview. That's the stuff that's like, hell yeah, pat on the back. That's what I'm here supposed to be doing.
And it was
It's
never
magic.
easy.
Yeah.
Nobody gave me the easy pass, and I'm here. It's really
Yeah.
rewarding.
Colin, what a gem of a human being you are. It was really nice having you on the show.
Oh, we should do this more often. I really enjoyed it.
I know this was really nice. I love getting to pick
was.
your brain, a little hangout.
You're so everything. You're so everything. That's the thing about you. So you're funny, and you're smart, and you're witty, and you're attractive. You are so everything. Most people
Thank
aren't.
you. Oh my God, that's
You had
so
a
kind of
cookbook.
you.
Yeah. Well, it's not just kind, it's admiration. Like, you don't have any borders. Never forget that. You have no borders. There are no limitations with you. Just remember that.
I try to keep them that way. And it's funny, sometimes I especially now in my mid 30s, I'm like, should I have had more borders? Do I need a border? I think about that sometimes, but it's really cool sort of navigating and wading through the water and picking and choosing those moments.
Well,
It's
society
more,
largely boxes all of us in, right? So try to fight that.
yeah. Fight the good fight. Colin, thank you so much. It was awesome to have you here.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.